All right, hello, welcome to video lecture number 12. This is New England's Freehold Society. We have three different sections today. We're going to look at farm families and specifically the role that women played in the household economy. We're going to look at farm property, and we're going to discuss how that property was inherited in terms of who got what land. And then lastly, Freehold Society in crisis. So let's get started. After 1720, the population and economies of the mainland British colonies grew dramatically. And those colonies developed distinctively American characteristics. In New England, that distinctiveness was characterized by the existence of communities of independent property owners. In Great Britain, 75% of the land was owned by the gentry and nobility. In New England, 70% was owned by freeholding families. Strategies for maintaining this system varied. Although the pattern of land ownership was distinctive, the place of women in rural New England was similar to that of Britain. Women were socialized to accept a subordinate role. Their marriage portions were smaller than those of their brothers, and they received no land. Women also had few property rights. Although a woman had the right to use a third of the family estate after her husband died, legally it belonged to her children. A woman was expected to be deferential toward her father and then towards her husband, and to work hard to help them. Her work usually included a broad spectrum of household tasks, as well as the bearing and raising of children. The stability of this system depended on parents' abilities to provide land for their children. But its very success created a crisis. A population of 100,000 in 1700 had grown to 400,000 by 1750. And even though the average birth rate of 5 to 7 children declined to 4 after 1750, many parents could no longer provide land for their children. Farm communities responded to this crisis in ways that preserved a freehold society. Many towns created new communities in frontier areas, and the people who remained increased productivity by introducing new crops and helping one another. So let's move on to the very first section, New England's Freehold Society. We are going to look at farm families, and specifically women in the household economy. Now, men claimed power in the state and authority in the family. Women were subordinate. Women in the colonies were raised to be dutiful helpmates to their husbands. The labor of the Puritan women was crucial, however, to the rural household economy. Bearing and rearing children were equally crucial. Most women would be married in their early 20s, and by their early 40s, had already given birth to 6 or 7 children. More women than men joined the churches so that their children could be baptized. A gradual reduction in farm size eventually prompted these couples to have fewer children. With fewer children, women had more time to enhance their family's standard of living. Most New England women's lives, however, were very tightly bound by a web of legal and cultural restrictions. They were excluded from an equal role in the church, and overall abided by that rule that they should be employed only in the home and only doing women's work in the home. So again, women had a very limited place in society. Moving to the next section, farm property. Men who migrated to the colonies escaped many traditional constraints, including the lack of land. Parents with small farms who could not provide their sons and daughters with land sent them to America as indentured servants. When indentures ended, some propertyless sons climbed this social ladder from laborer to tenant all the way to freeholder. Not all, but some. Children in successful farm families received what was called a marriage portion. Parents chose their children's partners because the family's prosperity depended on it, so they chose marriage partners very carefully. Brides relinquished ownership of their land and property to their husbands. Fathers had a cultural duty to provide inheritances for their children. Farmers created entire communities composed of these independent property owners. All right, our last section then is freehold society in crisis. With each new generation, the population of New England doubled, mostly from a natural increase. Parents had less land to give their children, so they had less control over their children's lives. By using primitive methods of birth control, many families were able to have fewer children. Families then petitioned the government for land grants and hacked brand new farms out of the forests. Land was used then more productively. Crops of wheat and barley were replaced with high-yielding potatoes and corn. Gradually, New England changed from a grain and livestock economy. A system of community exchange emerged that helped preserve this freehold ideal. Okay, so this does conclude our video lecture today, New England's Freehold Society. At this time, please answer the review questions in your notes and move on to the reading.